Lovely. Good afternoon, all, and thank you for joining us for another Secret Sunday session today. Today I'm joined by SABINE MCKENZIE, all the way from Western Australia. Now, before we get into all the nitty-gritty stuff about body image and also confidence, what is it that you do and who are you?
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to be here chatting to you about this. And I love everything that you do. So thanks for having me here. So I call myself a body image educator, and I do peer mentor work with people in eating disorder recovery. I'm actually training at the moment to be a recovery coach. So just up level that skill a little bit. I'm a qualified physiotherapist, but don't tend to do a lot of work in that space at the moment. I basically got to this point because of my own experience, really, and the need to have conversations about eating disorders and body image and raising awareness and encouraging people to seek help.
And you said that you're coming from your own experience. Was that your own experience with an eating disorder?
Yeah. So when I would say that I was a pretty confident, self-assured person at school, like a young person. I never really struggled with body image as such. And then kind of when I transitioned, so I went to school in the country here in WA in the wheat belt, and then I went to boarding school kind of in a slightly bigger country town. And then, so when I transitioned to Perth to start university in Fremantle to start my physio degree, I just found that transition quite tricky. And it was kind of the first time, like I would say the first 18 months or so, it was kind of the first time that I really just lost confidence in who I was and kind of what my values are. And I've since learned that like those period of transitions are like the perfect time for that inner critic, like that inner mean girl that we all have, to kind of become louder and louder. And I definitely relate to that because I just felt like I didn't quite know where I fit in with my friendship groups. I wasn't quite like nailing my study. I couldn't really figure out how to kind of really do that to the high standard that I've always set myself. And yeah, from those feelings of not feeling smart enough, not feeling like pretty enough, not feeling funny enough, like just not feeling enough. I think that is for me when my disordered behaviours kind of began. And it didn't ever really come at that point. It wasn't, I was reflecting back on this morning, and I wouldn't say that I really had really bad body image at that point. I didn't really, I still didn't really hate my body. I did think that if I changed it or if I controlled it a little bit more, that would possibly help me in terms of friendships and acceptance and feeling enough. But it wasn't like complete dissatisfaction. I think that kind of came a bit later for me. So I was really lucky that I had amazing support around me, and my parents and my friends really encouraged me to seek help, even though I didn't think that I needed it. I didn't think that I was sick. But eventually that penny did kind of drop. And then it was during that recovery phase that I really started to struggle with my body image and with my self-worth. And I think that recovery from that and the learning that experience gave me is why I'm so passionate about it now. I just wish that there was someone who had gone through what I was going through that I could speak to, which is why I do the peer mentoring. And then, I just wish that someone had given me more body image education when I was at school, basically.
Yeah. Why do you think during recovery that was when you started to develop body image issues?
So, I mean, my recovery was as all recoveries are, like non-linear, right? And so I call it part of my recovery journey, but it was still very disordered in a sense. So it was like I say it's part of my recovery journey because I was aware of what was going on, and I was like I was trying to fix it, like I was trying to get better, but I really struggled with like I was thinking that, but I was struggling to actually physically do that as well. And so I think a big thing that I struggled with was when I started on like my health and fitness lifestyle change, I got noticed, right? Like people noticed that I was looking better, or that I'd lost weight, or whatever had kind of happened in that space. And then to see that number changing in like a different direction, at first it was like mortifying. Like it was so uncomfortable, and this means that no one's going to like me, like no one's going to love me, like how can they? And then later on, after those first few like uncomfortable moments, even later on, it was still around not being recognized for me being in a healthier space mentally, but not possibly looking that way in society's standards. And I think that's where a lot of my like discomfort and struggle came from.
Yeah. So if we talk about the body image concept and how body image issues have sort of come about, what is body image and why do body image issues come about?
Yeah, sure. So body image is basically the perception that we have of our physical self. So when we look in the mirror, when we look down at ourselves, it's our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviors towards this body that we're seeing. And the important distinction there is that often when we feel unsatisfied in our body, or we have a poorer body image, we feel like the answer is to change our body. But actually, because body image is about what's going on up here, not about what's going on out here, it's our brain and our mindset that needs to be worked on and needs to be shifted. Changing our body isn't going to change how we feel about our body, or isn't necessarily going to mean a positive body image. So I think that's a really important kind of distinction to make. And then in terms of the negative body image or how struggles begin, it's so multifaceted. And we can look at external factors like media, culture, like the culture and the society that we live in, our family values, our peers, our colleagues, and then internal things as well, like our personality traits and our values, how we feel. All those things are kind of contributing to our sense of self and our sense of body.
Yeah. Why do you think we focus so much on needing to improve our physical body?
From a point of health, do you think? Is that what you're asking? Yeah. So I think it's because of what we've been told. I think especially even in the medical system that we have here in Australia, but in most first world countries, it's this message around health being a certain weight or being a certain range. When we look at BMI still being used as like an individual health marker, which it just shouldn't be. And this image that we get shoved down our throats around who goes to the gym and who is eating the salad, and those things being like held up as this massive marker of what health is, when health is so much more complex and health is so multifaceted, that when you start to explore that and realize all the things that contribute to how healthy you are, and your weight as well, like the things that just contribute to your weight, I think you can start to really zoom out and see that bigger picture. But what we like to do as a society is make things black and white and make them as simple as possible and be able to tick a box. And so that is where I think this idea of health looking a certain way and being only a certain set of behaviors really kind of comes about to this popular narrative.
Yeah. Why do you think it's also, I think for so long as well, it's been like this need to be thin? Where has that ideal come from, do you believe?
I think that throughout, if you look at like beauty standards throughout the decades, right, there's always a shift of what that looks like in different decades, in terms of body shape. And that I think it mostly comes from media, right? Like I don't think that media is the only thing to blame, but definitely that's the first thing that kind of comes to mind. The shapes that get kind of lifted in our society as being successful and happy and having it all. And if you are at the moment, you know, it is a very thin or fit kind of shape that we get seen as being a successful person. If we look at like influencers on social media, and the kind of that is what gets shown to us as this ideal of success and health. And so I think that, yeah, especially in our age now, it's social media in that digital form, but it has just been a different format, I think, throughout the decade. Like before social media, it was magazines, and before that, it was movies or TV or whatever. So, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think, I guess, the bombardment now of, you've got social media, you've also got magazines, and you've got movies, you've kind of got more devices to be exposed to the thin ideal, has actually increased body image issues?
Yeah, and it's the consistency, because before, you know, before social media, before it was on our phones, you'd pick up the magazine and you'd put it down and get on with your life, or you'd go to the movies and watch the movie and then leave. But now we are like always on our phones because it does so much for us. And so we're constantly bombarded with it. It's not as easy to just put it down and walk away, because we're constantly seeing that. It's much more consistent in our exposure to it.
Yeah. I hear a lot of conversations with young people amongst themselves that are constantly saying, look, I know it's fake, and they have the conversations, yeah, we know that social media posts, they aren't real, yet why are we still falling into that trap that that's what we want to be when we know it's fake?
Yeah. Such a good question, right? Because we all do it. We've all been there. Our mind knows. Our mind knows that they've probably taken a million photos to get this one. They've probably, if anything, they've definitely changed the colors. If nothing else, they've probably cleared their skin and changed their shape and whitened their teeth and everything else that can still be done on that. Like, we can have that intellectual knowledge, but viscerally in our body and in our gut and in our heart, there's that disjointedness, because we see that, and then we see the likes and the comments or the followers or the money or the brand deals or whatever it might be. And so we forget that intellectual part of it. We take on that more visceral reaction that our body has, rather than that intellectual view. And I mean, the way, if you don't mind, if I recommend something to kind of counteract that. Yeah. So I think definitely number one is that knowing. So it's great that the young people have that intellectual understanding around the fakeness or whatever it takes for that. But then the next kind of step is to as much as you can remove that, like, because there's people on social media that don't do that, and that I guess don't celebrate that kind of side of the platforms that we kind of engage in. And so as much as you can, especially if you're struggling with your body image, like if it's an issue, then you need to kind of be removing yourself from that moment of being able to have that visceral reaction. And alongside that is, like, just keep educating yourself, like, as much as you can. Keep reminding yourself, like, this isn't real, like, this is a fake picture. And the best way to do that is just to sit, like, in your city or in your town, like in a busy street, whatever, have a sit down and just people watch. Like, just see all the incredible people walking or skating or using their wheelchair past you, and you will see how diverse and how amazing, like, we all are, and how actually we are all so different, but that doesn't really get shown on our phones.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And it's kind of like we're all living in this fantasy world at the moment and we're not living in reality. So I think that's a perfect example, just to sit back and just watch all just humans just walking in real life instead of being in this magical world that we think is real when it's not.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And are you finding in your practice that I guess you're seeing a lot more men as well being, I guess, vulnerable to body image issues?
I don't tend to see it personally. Like, I don't have people reach out to me that are males or that identify as males. I think because of my relatability to young women or people who identify as female, and that is who tends to come to like see me or reach out to me. But in the bigger conversation, I definitely feel like there is more, I think more of a conversation, which is great, but also in the evidence. So I think on Instagram, I think Break Binge Eating, he does some great really evidence-based research around eating disorders, and yeah, it's in the science. Like, guys are having more issues as well.
Yeah. Now, if we jump back a little bit to the female side, I think at such a young age as well, young girls are being exposed to body image issues. Why do you think it is getting younger? It's kind of younger women, younger girls, you know, before they even reach high school, they get being exposed to wanting to change their stomach, wanting to change their thighs. Do you think this is a conversation that girls are now having in the playground?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. And one of the things that kind of spurred me, I guess, when I started my business called Confidence, it was in 2016, and I was really focusing on prevention. So I was going into schools and running workshops, and doing kind of laying the foundations for establishing positive body esteem. But I wasn't going super young. Like, I was targeting maybe like 12 to 14-year-olds. But the amount of inquiries that I had for 6-year-olds
Holy cow.
is like, yeah, I'm not, like, I wish I was kidding, right? And not only that, but there was this time where I was running this course. So the girls were with me for like an hour and a half. They didn't have any, like, necessarily have struggles. Again, it was more like a preventative kind of group. And it was for 4 weeks. And then the last week, I told the parent who was dropping them off that we were going out for burgers to kind of celebrate, and that the parents were all welcome to come. And she responded with, you know, that was great and that was amazing, but she's not eating burgers at the moment because she's trying to like lose her belly fat. Like, the parent was saying that. And it just hit me in that moment that, you know, this young person was in my kind of sphere for like an hour and a half or 4 weeks, and that was it. But what they were going home to was their parent restricting for like aesthetic reasons. And by no means do I think that body image or eating disorders are caused by parents. Like, that is a wrong narrative, and something that I really hated in my journey was that experience around the narrative around that. But what my point was, or my point is that I realized how much we as adults and the people around our young people still struggle to accept ourselves and to accept our bodies as they are. And so if we can't show them what that looks like and what that feels like, how can they be expected to know how to encompass that? Because they do. When we're born, we all have like body neutrality or positive body image, right? And at some point that gets shifted. And on the other hand, you might have a really positive body image environment at home, and then it's the playground, or it's the teacher, or it's the uncle and the auntie, or the grandma, or that wider circle of influence that just makes comment on food or body or their own stuff or the child's stuff, and that's where it's kind of going to these young impressionable people.
It's just so sad that it just seems so normalized as well. these conversations being had, you know, between your parents and with your young one is just so normal, and it's like, it's not normal though.
No, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And a lot, like, because if we're thinking of like the generation, probably like our parents and before that, that is when that like diet culture really started to take off, right? And so they were really immersed in that time as well. I'm not saying that we aren't, but I think I feel like it really was huge at that point. And the answer to a lot of issues, especially from medical professionals as well, was, you know, to diet and to cut out food groups. And I feel that kind of being ingrained in them and what's the right thing to do has now impacted kind of this next generation, and what has made it so normalized. And that's why I think conversations like this, and why I do a lot of like just body image conversations with adults, and is to challenge where they've learnt these things about diets and about health and about weight, challenge that and bring them some new evidence, like bringing them the facts around, you know, health doesn't equal weight. The focus is on health behaviors, and science tells us that. And, you know, we're so much better off not focusing on that, because we know that dieting leads to like eating disorders. Again, it's not the only cause, but yeah, it's a really high risk factor that leads down the slippery slope to an eating disorder.
Yeah. This diet culture, it's just got so much money pumped into it, and it's constantly selling us information that we need to change who we are, how we eat, how we move our bodies. Do you think that will ever change because it is such a money driver?
I have to say yes, because otherwise I would just cry and not get up in the morning.
Yeah.
So I do think that it can be changed, but it's always just such a kick in the guts when they fake their change. Like it's you know, what is it, like a wolf in sheep's clothing? Is that what the saying is?
Let's just go with it. Sounds good.
How, you know, when we see, like, for example, Weight Watchers like rebranding as, I don't know, wellness something or whatever, or like this new Noom like diet thing that says it's not a diet, but like it's still a diet. Like it's still, at the end of the day, that's what it's doing. And I think that's where it just gets so tricky for us as consumers, because again, like, it's not our fault. Like, it's not our fault that we buy into this or that we succumb to it, because as you say, they've got so much money behind them and so much knowledge of how to manipulate our brains and our psychology. And I think that why I still like have faith is because I think, even though it's such a huge issue, I feel like the change has to start with us as individuals, because if us as individuals feel enough, then we don't give our money away to I guess solve that feeling of not feeling enough. And so if we don't give them the money, like, surely at some point they've just got to like suffocate. I don't know. That's my plan.
Okay, let's make them suffocate. That sounds good. Good plan.
But willing to hear from anyone else who has some better ideas. Like, let's brainstorm.
Yes, probably not on a live Zoom. We'll do it somewhere else, just a little bit private, so we don't have anyone coming after us.
Very true. Oh my gosh, I didn't think about that.
That's all right.
Feel free to creep out.
So now, if we talk about, I guess, minimizing our footprint in the diet culture, when it comes to confidence, is that the key thing in order to, I guess, love yourself?
Yes and no. I think it depends what confidence means to you, because I think it can mean a lot of different things. And one example of confidence is, I guess, that really extroverted personality who can speak in front of a crowd, or just you know, get a room laughing or whatever. Like, that's one example of confidence. But I think confidence is much more complicated and nuanced than that, on an individual, like, personable level. So the way that rather than using the word confidence, I like to look at like the body image scale. And this was a really big game changer for me, because I kind of thought that I either hated my body or I loved my body. I didn't realize that there was like places in between that could still mean that I had a positive body image or that I had confidence, without needing to like love my body or love myself. And body positivity and self-love is such a massive trend now as well, that when you're in the trenches of disliking or hating your body, it can feel like a really massive jump. And so what the body image, positive body image scale starts with is just tolerance. So can you just tolerate what you're seeing in the mirror? Or then there's acceptance, accepting that it is what it is right now. Then there's neutrality, which is my personal little favorite spot. It's understanding that whole thing that Taryn Brumfitt from Embrace documentary says around your body being a vehicle, not an ornament. Like our body is here to do things. It's not here to look a certain way. And actually to take that, to take the emphasis that we place on how our body looks, take that away a little bit and just understand that, yeah, my body is the way it is. And that's not really going to impact me positively or negatively today. I'm just feeling neutral about it. And then we can go to liking and loving. But there's actually all these places beforehand that we don't consider. And I think being any one of those places can help you feel more confident, and I guess help you feel like you don't need to change.
So how do you work, if we're looking at the scale, how do you work your way up the scale if you're down at the bottom end?
Yeah, so I think another thing to consider is that it's fluid. So you don't necessarily like travel up it and then, you know, stay at the top. You fluctuate up and down. And I mean, that's just the positive body image scale. But then if you're not even on that, like if you're feeling body dissatisfaction or body hatred or body dislike, then we need to just try and get you on that. So firstly, just understanding where you want to be, like what is your goal? Like, do you want to just try and aim for tolerance? So you're just on that. Is there another word that feels more comfortable for you? Really understanding where that person wants to be. And then figuring out, you know, what is it about, like what part of the body image is the biggest struggle at the moment, because there can be different kind of categories of it. But yeah, I think knowing as well, though, that we all have bad body image days, like even someone who, you know, is relatively has a positive relationship with their body, I would put myself in that category. Like I have bad body image days, I have bad body image moments, but what happens now is that I just understand that for what it is. I allow myself to feel those feelings, and I know that it's going to pass. And having that understanding again that body image is about what's going on up here and not what's going on out here makes me realize that I don't need to engage in any behaviors to try and change that. A really good example of that, actually, I've just thought of one that I use is, you know, when you like grab a picture of, you see a picture of yourself from like a long time ago,
yeah,
and you remember at that time how like much you hated your body or how fat you felt or how gross your arms or whatever part of the body was. Yeah. And then you're looking at this picture now and you're thinking like, what the heck was I even thinking? Like I looked absolutely fine. And I think that is just such a perfect example of it being about what's going on up here. Yeah. But in terms of strategies, sorry, I went off track a little bit.
That's all right. I was lost in it as well. It was really good.
So I wrote an ebook which is called The Better Body Image Basics Guide, and it basically talks through 5 strategies for better, more positive body image. And some of the things that I share in there, and one of my favorite ones is non-appearance related compliments. So starting to see the positives in other people that aren't related to their appearance. Yep. And then once you can do that and compliment others for how they make you feel or what you value in them or why you're so grateful that they're in your lives, can then make you start to think that about yourself as well. Because how many times do we like catch up with a friend and say, you know, oh, you look so good, or your hair looks so great, or have you lost weight? Like, ugh, I hate that one. And right, but how often is that the focus of the introduction or the catch up, rather than, you know, you're such a loyal friend, like, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today, like, you always take the time for me and I really appreciate that. Or you always make me laugh, like, thank you so much for bringing so much humor to my life, like, I really appreciate that. Or however it might be. But yeah, being able to see that in other people will help you start to see those things in yourself. And then one of the other big ones that I advocate for, especially, and it doesn't relate to everyone at all stages of life, and a lot of people have a lot of resistance for it, but I'm a massive advocate for ditching the scales. I don't think that those numbers give us any kind of information about our health or our worth, and they really pull us back down into negative body image kind of feelings and emotions. So working through kind of getting rid of those is a huge one that I advocate for.
Yeah. And what about, I guess, when you approach the mirror? I find the mirror is such a big thing for young girls, especially when you look in that mirror and it's just like, you can see it on their faces half the time and they just fall apart really looking at themselves, whether they're wearing a bikini or whether they're just wearing clothes, and they start picking and pulling at themselves thinking that they need a change. How can you feel good about seeing your reflection?
Yeah, I think positive affirmations can be a great one for certain people at certain points. I think if we can try and say something positive to ourselves, to our reflection in that moment, even if it's just in our head, to try and counteract all that negativity, that can be really beneficial, even if we don't believe it, right? Even if it's not the truth to us yet, just saying those words or thinking those words, whatever the statement might be, and it needs to be something that they come up with. But it doesn't even have to be about I look fabulous in this bikini, or I look beautiful in this bikini. It doesn't have to be that. It can just be like, let me just have a think. I'm so thankful that that I can be going to the beach right now with my friends, right? So it doesn't even have to be addressing the body, but I think just getting into that habit can really strengthen those pathways in our mind. Even if, as I said, even if we don't quite believe it yet. But definitely I would say that reaching out for help as well, like if they're finding that they're doing that often and that it's really impacting their mindset and their day-to-day activities, that's okay. Like, reach out for help, get someone to like talk to you about that. And whether it's just, you know, an adult or the friends around you, if there's someone that you can trust, or more someone like a peer mentor or a psychologist, whatever it might be, whatever feels comfortable. Butterfly Foundation helpline is a great one as well. I guess just to start that conversation, because even though it's normal and like we all go through it, it doesn't have to be normal. Yeah.
And you talk about the concept, I guess, faking it, and that concept does come up a lot. And I know during my recovery, it did come up a lot. You know, this ideal that just fake it till you make it. Do you think it's a necessary concept to just, if you don't believe that, I guess, you're beautiful or that you're at your ideal weight or whatever it is, should you just fake it until eventually it happens? Is that how it works?
I think it depends. I think it depends on the person. I can't give you a clear-cut answer for that, because I think for some people, yes. Yeah. I'm just trying to think back on my, what would I say that because for me, even though I just said about positive affirmations, I hated positive affirmations. And,
I never did them with a smile, that's for sure.
I know. And the reason that I still like talk about them is because what I realized is, even though I hated them and I didn't really do them that often, is that someone else wrote one for me. So it was like a few sentences long, and it was about kind of like who I was as a person. And like when I first like read it, I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is so stupid. And then I might have done it like 3 or 4 times over like a couple of years. So not often at all. But then I actually found this piece of paper like years later. I'm talking like 8 years later, I found this piece of paper. And like I was in tears, because like I 100% believed everything that was on there. And I don't necessarily think that came from saying that to myself in the mirror those few times, but somehow focusing on things outside of my body and outside of having to love my body, focusing on what makes me me in terms of how I make other people feel and my passions and my work and those kind of things. I think those are the things that really led me to accepting myself rather than the focus being around the body. Does that answer the question, or have I gone off?
No, that does. Yeah, it really does. No,
Okay.
it's great. And I think you're so right that so many, I guess, young people are being fed so many messages, and I really think it's hard for them as well, because they see a lot of people that I guess are more mature that are now accepting their bodies, and they're like, well, I'm not at that stage of my life, so I can't look up to them and be like, oh, I'll just be that one day. It's like for them in that moment, they find it hard because there's not many young people, I guess, that are accepting their bodies. So they see all mature people accepting their bodies and going, well, I'll do that when I have kids or something like that.
Yes.
And that's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. No, definitely. And I mean, I get that a little bit. It's something that I address as well. You know, I often hear people after they have children, that's when they're like, oh, you know, now I've got so much appreciation for my body because I've had children, which is great, right? Like at any point in your life, if you can get to that point, is amazing. But like, I just don't feel like we should wait for that. And I didn't wait for that. And I think if we have this narrative that plays out, that that has to be the catalyst. I think that's going to be a real shame because like so many of us don't go down that path. And also it's just so far away for young people, right? Like to think about that kind of part of their lives. And what about the life that you're missing out on between then and then, right? Yeah. So, I mean, I think if there was anything that I would say to someone in that moment of, being that young person and really feeling that discomfort in their bodies, you know, it's around things like it's normal for bodies to change. Like it's normal for us to go through growth or shrinking. You know, it's normal for us to grow taller. It's normal for fat to settle in different parts of our bodies at different stages of our lives. And I think the more value that can be placed on these young people outside of that, and the more that they can believe that just because their body looks a certain way doesn't make them a good or a bad person, I think that is what's really going to strengthen a positive body image, or I think make young people feel okay with it. And I don't know if like it is normal, right? Like it is an experience that most of us have. But yeah, I think when it gets too much, like that's just not okay. And it's actually not okay that it's normal. Like I'm not happy with that.
Yeah, I know. And it's crazy because some of the young people that I talk to too, they find that even when they try to escape it on social media or your rom-coms or your magazines, it's still that conversation in the classroom. It's your conversation that your parents bring up that, oh, I'm going to start this new diet because I want to lose this weight for this, or conversation in the workplace. You can't actually escape it.
No,
and it's really sad that that's kind of always going to be subconsciously on repeat in your head because it's just always flowing in everyday conversations. But I think, as you said, if we can change that conversation, that, you know, some young people can feel confident and not have to, I guess, go back to that social comparison again, because that's another big thing. And hopefully we can have more people that are loving themselves.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, again, like loving themselves, amazing, but even just feeling neutral, like even just understanding that their body is the vessel, I think is great. And you're right, like it is so much about it being normalized in the conversations that we're having around us, or not even that we're having, but that people are having around us. And it's something that you have to be smarter, right? You can hear all of this, but you have to know that doesn't mean that you have to do that. or that there's anything wrong with you. You have to know that that's a reflection on them and their issues and their susceptibility to diet culture and what's happening in the world. But you don't have to. You can be smarter.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what are some, I guess, lastly, what are just some takeaways that young people, even parents, could take away? I guess your little advice on, you know, appreciating being that body neutral and also being your best version of yourself and as confident as possible.
Yeah. I mean, I think like my little mantra is owning your worth beyond your image. And I guess I've spoken to that a few times already, but I think that's really what it comes down to for me, is that takeaway message that the world tries to tell us that our worth lies in how we present ourselves and how we look and our physical selves. But that's a lie. It's actually what's going on in here. And that's the most important thing. So I think the more that can be the focus, and that we consider the type of people that we are in terms of the kindness that we show, and the impact that we have, or just being able to reach out when we're struggling, and showing that strength and that bravery. I think that's what is really important, and what I hope that other people can start to see as being the most important.
That's awesome. And where can we find you online on social media so we can get some more positivity in people's feeds?
Yeah, I make some ridiculous reels sometimes on Instagram, which are a bit of a laugh.
I love them, actually.
Thank you. So yeah, on Instagram, I'm SABINE MCKENZIE, as well as Core Confidence Perth, which is my business page. And then, yeah, my website is coreconfidence.net. So yeah, people can find me there, and I always welcome DMs and conversations. Like, I'm just so passionate and just love this stuff. So feel free to reach out. Yeah, if you've got anything to kind of contribute to the conversation, or if anything kind of came to mind from it, I would love to hear from people.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I am truly grateful that you were so willing to jump on today and share your story, and also just some little tips and hints into the world that we are trying to start the conversation about. So thank you so much. And yes, I really appreciate it.
You are so welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
That's okay. Thank you everyone out there as well for joining us today for another Secret Sunday session, and we'll catch you next month for another one. Thank you.